Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 154. As always, I'm joined by Jordan.
Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where I'm joined by Jerrad.
Whoa, that caught me off guard. We're in the Twilight Zone.
It's a mirror. Jerrad, it's so great to have you here on the Gamecast, whatever you want to call it.
I'm glad to be back. Unfortunately, I'm a liar. Last week I said all three of us would be back again this week. That is not true.
Ooh.
Some plans came up in the way and Dom wasn't able to join us.
Dom, you made me look like an asshole!
You made me look like a liar. Hopefully he'll be back next week. Anyways, with Jordan and I, we're going to be talking about what we've been playing. I did keep to my promise, and I did get to starting Gears of War 4. Remember I talked about I wanted to start it and finish it before Gears 5 came out. I'll talk about that last because that's the more meaty thing I want to talk about. The other two things I played, Apex Legends, still grinding away at Season 2, having a blast with that. Madden 20, so I finally pulled the trigger and started the QB1, like the single-player mode, Jordan, that we had talked about.
It's a long shot, it's a long shot.
The cool thing is that if you had played the other two, because obviously the last two Maddens each individually had the long shot mode, right? Yeah. One of the primary characters in that story mode, who was like the quarterback's coach, is in this mode as well. So he makes a cameo, which is pretty cool. So if you play those other two, there's a little bit of a tie into the previous mode. So the way it starts off is you do the typical like video game thing where you're talking to yourself, murmuring whatever, and then you go into the bathroom, and once you go to look in the mirror, guess what you do at that point, Jordan?
What's that, Jerrad?
You create your character and how he looks. I know, it's never been done in a video game before.
Wow. You know, these guys, they'll think of something new that'll just catch you off guard.
Innovation. And all jokes aside, obviously it's what we expect from video games, but it's just funny to see these kind of like RPG tropes from other video games in a sports game, right? So once you leave the restroom, you go to sign up to get into the like the national championship stadium, and the lady's like, "Oh, your name's not on the list. Who are you?" Guess what happens next? You create your player's name. And then, so you at this point, you select which college you're going to be. Actually, I skipped that. So at the beginning, you're like a high school prospect, and they're talking about, oh, where is he going to go to school? You pick your college. I think there's 10 choices, right? So I personally chose LSU, Louisiana State University. And then what happens is you go to the school, and this is all cutscenes. You go and talk to the coach. And you're like, I'm glad to enroll here. I'm happy to have a chance to play and start at a good college, yada, yada, yada. And then you end up finding out that one of the best quarterback prospects in the country transferred to LSU. You got bumped to the bench. He starts for 4 years, essentially. You guys make it to the national championship playoffs, right? So it's a semifinal game and then a finals game. He gets hurt, and you obviously have to step up and be the starter. So there's a storyline of like, you were a commit that came here, and instead of bailing to another school, you stuck it out because you felt that you could beat him in a competition. Turns out you couldn't, right? So
that was a pretty dumb fucking idea.
So you actually end up having a receiver on the team who's like the secondary character, and you find out that he lost his brother to cancer, and you end up finding out that he has a really close relationship with the fan, who's this girl who looks sick. Turns out that she's obviously also actively battling cancer. And you meet her.
For a second, when you said she looks sick, I was like, is this girl faking?
Oh, no.
Oh, that is a deep plot line for Madden.
No. So you meet her and you meet her father, and they're big fans of him. And after you end up winning the first playoff game, you meet them again outside of the locker room, and she tells you how big of a fan she is of you, and she wants you to try to throw 3 touchdowns for her, right? So at this point, I'm like, oh, God, is it going to be like I go out there and perform, and then after the game I find out she didn't make it, right? Like one of those things like, oh, I threw 3 touchdowns for her.
If you don't throw 3 touchdowns, she's like fucking pissed.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Luckily, neither of those things happen. The cool thing too is you get to choose your opponent. So if you're somebody who's familiar with like college football and you want to play against a certain opponent, it technically doesn't really make much of a difference because the actual players from those schools aren't in the game, right? But it's just like an aesthetically pleasing thing. So for both of the games, the semifinal. Actually, no, you don't get to choose who you play for the championship. It probably picks that based on the team you pick or the team you eliminate in the semifinals. But you do get to pick your team that you face in the semifinals. You play them. I performed pretty well, and I also won the game. I'm pretty sure that if you either A, don't perform well and still win, or don't win, you get different cutscenes and they say different things, because the way my whole process went is I was a stud out there. Like, I was dominating, right?
A stud.
And the cool thing is that I ended up getting drafted in the first round of the NFL draft by the Miami Dolphins. And there's an achievement because I believe that's the highest you can get drafted in this, because the Dolphins are one of the only teams in the NFL, like out of 4 teams, that don't really have a franchise quarterback, right? And
Miami.
That's the interesting thing, is you don't choose your team. So for some people that may be a negative in the game mode. For me, it's a positive because that makes it more like a campaign. I'm not simply choosing where I want to play. I have to play out the hand I was given, right? So I got drafted by the Miami Dolphins. I haven't gone beyond that, but when I got drafted by them and then the menu thing came up, because a lot of this was gameplay and cutscenes, I hadn't even gotten to like a menu yet for the story mode. I'm in a QB battle right now in training camp, so I'm not even handed the starting job, which is really cool. And there's text messages that you get from your agent and your coach and stuff, and you have to reply back in certain ways. And the other thing I forgot to mention is through this entire beginning of the game, you get to ask questions, and depending on how you answer them, your personality is changed. So I answered a lot of
deep shit, man.
I answered a lot of questions in a very team-oriented leadership fashion, so I would get leadership points or teammate points. But there was a couple of times where I answered in a way that wasn't necessarily cocky, but it was a little combative in terms of them not believing that I was able to like step in and replace this starter, right, and help my team win. And I got like I think it was called tense. So I got plus tense, which means like in pressure situations, I could have a tendency to be a little tense and not be as loose and comfortable, right? So you kind of like define your character.
Jesus fucking Christ, man! Like, workplace dynamics in the middle of Madden dialogue options. What the fuck?
That being said, obviously for an RPG-ish type story, it's very bare bones. It's what you'd expect from a sports game. What I will say is the acting performances so far are pretty good for a sports game.
Jerrad, I am glad that you like playing football. I would like to be out on the field with you and throwing passes for touchdowns.
So the coach that's from Longshot, the receiver, and you are all, you can tell, are actual like voice actors. The one NFL player I've run into so far was Patrick Mahomes, who's the cover athlete, the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He wasn't as bad as those NBA guys, but he's obviously an NFL player trying to act. You know what I mean? It's not super rough, but he obviously has the weakest performance out of everybody. The really cool thing, too, and this is just a subtle thing, and obviously we're used to this from other video games, but in sports games this is a whole nother level for them anyways. I had the option of 3 different voices, and they're all fully acted, which is really cool. So obviously in Longshot, both of them, and even in the FIFA one, it's one actor doing that performance. In this one, since you are creating your own guy, you have the choice of 3 different voices, and they're all very different. One's more of like a Cali accent, not necessarily a surfer bro, not that dramatic. One's a little bit more Midwestern, and one's a little bit higher pitched, with a little bit of like a New York twang, a little bit.
Some fucking BioWare shit going on here.
Yeah, but it's cool that we have the option because it hasn't really been the case. And I made my player look as close to me as I could, but obviously the customization tools aren't, this isn't, what's the RPG, Black Desert, that's infamous for its character creator. So this isn't Black Desert Online, but it's decently close. So I'm having a blast with that. Rocking number 18 for my boy Peyton Manning, who I believe is the greatest quarterback of all time. But and another cool thing is, at the beginning of the game, when you're before you get to choose your number or all that stuff, the way it dictates the type of quarterback you're going to be when you start playing, because obviously there's like scrambling quarterbacks and pocket passers and all these different type of prototypes, right? You get some questions about what quarterback did you look up to most growing up? So it was like John Elway, Dan Marino, Tom Brady, like, and you kind of choose these options, and it carves you out a specific type of quarterback that you are. So I answered Peyton Manning and Steve Young in different questions for the type of quarterbacks I like. So I'm pretty accurate in the pocket, but I also have the ability to move out and run with the ball like Steve Young used to do. So it gives me my own unique feeling quarterback. So I'm not just, oh, I'm a carbon copy of Peyton Manning, right? So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Enjoying that pretty much. Going to be playing that in the coming weeks and seeing how that goes before, Control and these other releases come out. I'll still be playing it, but this is like the time to play Madden the most for me, and then I'll be playing it in spurts along the way. The other game, I played was Gears of War 4, so I finally got to this. As we had talked about, I had been wanting to play this and finish it before Gears 5 came out. The same thing is going to happen next year. I want to get Halo 5 done before Infinite comes out. So, started Gears of War 4. If you remember, Dom had finished this when it, maybe last year at some point, right? Because it came out in 2017, but I think Dom played it last year. It has 5 acts. In about 2 hours of gameplay, I already finished the first act, so I'm literally 1/5 of the way through. The game didn't start how I expected it to. It starts off with you infiltrating a cog base. Well, actually, before that, you do a mission before the events of Gears 1. Then you do a mission towards the end of Gears 3. And then you jump into current day, and you're these outcasts. You're JD, who's Marcus Phoenix's son. Kate Diaz, who's going to be the protagonist of Gears 5. Dell, who's the black guy from the trailer for Gears 5 that's like consoling Kate and going with her on her journey. And then a fourth guy who I don't remember his name. He's like a disposable character, right? He wasn't really important. And you're infiltrating a cog base to try to get this piece of equipment that helps build walls and equipment and stuff like that, because you're JD and Dell left a cog colony to go live like in the outskirts in the wild with like these people who have defected from like traditional society, because as you come to find out, it's very militaristic and very totalitarian in some ways, and it's like very controlled, and it's just like them wanting to protect people because of the events of the first 3 Gears games, right?
Gotcha.
You get some subtle teases at Marcus of like him watching over his son through like drones and stuff like that, and watching it from a distance. At the end of Act 1, the place where Kate Diaz is from gets attacked by COG forces, and you guys are leaving to find help. And yeah, this is like the first hour of the game. You guys are leaving to get help, and Dell mentions to JD, "Hey man, let's go get help. You know who we can get help from?" And Kate's obviously like, "Who is he talking about?" And JD's like, "Don't worry about it." So obviously this is you guys going to go find Marcus. You show up at this big like manor, and the building itself looks completely torn down. And Kate Diaz is like, "This doesn't look like where somebody lives. It looks completely decimated." And JD's like, "That's not where he lives." And like the camera pans, and he's like this little shack to the side. So it's like totally like Marcus Phoenix. He doesn't want this giant like fancy house. He'll just live in like this tiny little hut, being a recluse weirdo. That's pretty much where I got. That's where the first act cut off, because a lot of the first act was infiltrating the cog base, then getting the equipment, and then escorting it out, right? And you having to deal with all of the repercussions of that. I'm enjoying it so far. It's about what I expected. So when the reviews came out for this game, it got anywhere between a 7 to an 8, and people felt it wasn't different enough from traditional Gears,
right?
That it felt samey in some aspects, but it still was a very solid experience. Like, it was a well-developed game.
Kind of like Pokemon Sword and Shield versus like a Breath of the Wild or Odyssey that you would like to see.
Exactly. When Sword and Shield comes out, I'm pretty sure me and you are going to really enjoy it and have a blast with it, but it's not, evolving the franchise in any meaningful way. It's kind of the same in a lot of aspects, with a bit of a graphical. I don't think there's going to be a thing
where I'm like, Jerrad, can you believe they did that shit in this game?
Exactly. It'll be more like, dude, I did this really cool thing, but, it's slightly different than what we used to be able to do. And that's exactly what Gears of War 4 is so far. I don't know if there's any new surprises, but it's not a bad thing. Like, I haven't played Gears in such a long time that it feels like home in a lot of ways. It's a franchise that I'm very familiar with. Like, active reloading is something that comes naturally to me. Exactly. Cover-based shooting. They still are some of, if not the best developers for that, for the third-person cover-based shooting. They just do it so well. They were the pioneers in that at the beginning. Obviously, it's a different studio now, but a lot of the people from Epic moved over to Coalition. So it's the Coalition is made up of essentially Gears people. It's just under a different umbrella. I looked up on how long to beat. Roughly for a normal playthrough, it's anywhere between 8.5 to 9 hours. Like I told you, 2 hours in, I'm through Act 1. I'll probably finish it in about 8 more hours or so, give or take, depending on how much I look for collectibles. But I will be able to finish it before Gears 5. I want to finish actually before next week's show, so we'll see if that can happen. In terms of other things, read some comics. Haven't read House of X for this week yet.
Gotcha.
Just as a precautionary, because I know me and you are super into it. I just haven't had a chance to. I downloaded all my comics yesterday. Haven't had a chance to dive in yet. Did I watch anything interesting? Trying to think. I'm still watching. Oh, I started Hunter x Hunter Season 2. I talked about finishing Season 1 last week. I think that's pretty much it. Nothing drastic that I watched. What about you? What have you been playing and intaking last week?
Since you were just brought up watching stuff, I'll give a couple shout outs real quick. Just started season 7 of Always Sunny.
Hell yeah.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And so when you had mentioned, we kind of talked about the series when I first started jumping back into it, and you had mentioned Mac and his various weight throughout the series. And I didn't realize that, like, he basically walks into the 7th season super fat, whereas end of season 6 he was like totally
jacked,
in shape, totally in shape. And so apparently this was like kind of like a method acting thing that McElhaney did, where he's like, he gained weight on purpose in like a safe manner with, like trainers and stuff, and then like lost it after the season. So it was like specifically for that. It wasn't just him being lazy in real life and getting fat and then they make jokes about it on the show.
He Christian Bale'd it, right? Like what he did for Vice?
Yeah, exactly. He Christian Bale'd it is a great way to put it. It's the opposite of D in season 6, where Caitlin... what's her name? I guess it's McElhaney's wife, Rob McElhaney's wife, got actually pregnant in real life, and then they make jokes about it on the show about, like, they have episodes specifically about it. So that was really interesting that he did interviews and talking about, like, why that would make sense for Mac's character, and about how he thought it would be a cooler direction to go in than like characters getting prettier throughout a series. Like he referenced Big Bang Theory and shit. I'm like, this is really well thought out and deep for a show as goofy as Always Sunny.
For a show about like 4 to 5 assholes, yeah.
Right. 4 to 5 assholes. So yeah, it's a great show and it is extremely cynical. There are certain times where I'm not as much trying to watch it just because, I need to not be dwelling on such, like, shitty vibes sometimes, But it's such a great show, man. It's so hilarious, and it's genius comedy in so many aspects. The characters being the joke themselves and not realizing it is kind of the through line of the show, and it really is genius. That the funniest parts is, sure, there's like really funny slapstick where somebody's getting like, hit by a car or whatever, but there's a lot of moments where the characters think that they're being really smart and they're absolute fucking morons. Yeah. And it ends up being really funny in that sense. So really enjoying that show. About halfway through with it having 13 seasons. So wow, shout out to that. And also finished season 1 of Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. So enjoying that series more than I was at the start. I thought it was just pretty good at the start. I think it's really good now. I think that it might still be my probably not least favorite Ghost in the Shell properties, because that would probably be the second movie and the live action movie. But besides that, I would say I like the Arise prequel OVAs and the original movie better, which, Jerrad, I had to go back to. I was finishing the first season of the show, and I was like, I gotta watch the movie again, because I love that shit, and it is kind of like what you were talking about with Cowboy Bebop. It is like an anime masterpiece in a lot of ways. It is one of those classics. So I found a version online that was actually like a high definition TV rip, because I've heard some bad things about the Blu-ray and compared to myself, and definitely noticed a difference. So watching it in a new light with better color grading and better contrast, it was a really special experience, and it is a really special movie. Absolutely seminal piece of cyberpunk fiction and cyberpunk anime. So really glad that I decided to go back for that. And I thought, while I'm at it, what the hell? I'll just rewatch the Arise series as well. I think it's like it's 5 1-hour parts, and there's a movie. So basically just kind of stumbled into doing the whole Ghost in the Shell rewatch simply because I was going through the TV series. So really enjoying both of those things. And then as far as what I played, continuing on with Fire Emblem 3 Houses, I found out something very interesting about the game, Jerrad.
What's that?
So, of course, there are the 3 paths with the 3 houses, as previously explained. However, there is a secret 4th path. Have you heard about this?
Nuh-uh.
So, it only exists in the house that I chose, the Black Eagles, with Edelgard as your house leader. And it occurs at a branching point in the story. So the story branches either way, but if you are, I guess, like me, and you just happen to stumble upon in like a walkthrough online the fact that there is a 4th path and you can branch off this way, then you can go on a certain mission with a certain someone, and that will open up that second branch for you. So like I said, it's going to branch either way, but you may not be able to choose that branch, that second branch, if that alternate branch, I should say, if you didn't kind of set yourself up for it on a little side quest, right?
Oh, cool.
So it just so happened that I was looking something else up about the game and noticed that right as I was passing the date on the calendar for me to go on that side quest.
Oh, wow.
And if you've played a Persona game before, you understand, like, as your calendar is moving throughout the year, there are certain times that you have to do certain things if you want to unlock certain things. And I wouldn't say Fire Emblem has been as much like this, but with this specific, very extremely specific instance that massively modifies the game, it has gone in that direction. So, like I said, it just so happened that I figured it out and figured out how I could do it. So much so, I was so close, Jerrad, that I had actually passed that part. However, and this is important to our show, because of me having Nintendo Online in my cloud backup save from yesterday, I was able to jump back to that cloud save and hit that day where I needed that quest.
Hell yeah.
So we've talked a lot about, like, oh, I don't need Nintendo Online or whatever. You guys have been like nonchalant about it. Totally fine, but I've been like, what the fuck? What about your cloud saves? And it's like totally saved my ass here.
For those
hours
listening,
and hours.
For those listening, can you give the specific date so that way they know?
Yes, it is. Well, it's not February 8th. It's 2/8. Okay. Is the date. The months are not called, January, February, whatever. But yeah, it would be the 8th day of the second month. So it's after the new year. And it is pretty well into the game, like 25, 30 hours into the game. So not something you have to worry about at the start. But, Jerrad, what I did is I've actually set myself up with 2 save files. So there's like a pivotal battle, and after the battle you make your decision, right?
Yeah.
And so after the battle I was able to save. So after the battle finished, I saved, and then I made choice number 1. I'm not going to spoil anything. Choice number 1, path number 1, and made a save file there. And then I jumped back, made choice number 2, and used a second save file. So now I'm following the base standard path, right? And I'm going to follow that up until the end. Before I finish the game, though, so I don't trigger New Game Plus, I'm going to jump back, as long as I feel like it, which I'm sure I will. I'm pretty into this game. And play that second alternate secret path up until the end. And then I'll finish them out on one of the 2 paths. Probably the standard path.
That's a pet peeve I hope that developers try to work towards with, not all developers, because some developers do this, but I wish there was an easier way just to in-game as you're playing make multiple save spots on the go, so it's not as much of a hassle as having to work with your cloud save or do all of this stuff.
So the game does what a lot of other games do in these situations, where it says this is about to irrevocably change the game. Are you sure you want to continue? You've seen that before. And so if they're going to do that, then yeah, why not say, this is about to irrevocably change the game. Would you like to give yourself the option to come back for this second branching path without having to play the whole game again? I would really appreciate that. Kind of a chapter select, if you will.
Just give me 2, 3, 4 slots to save independently on my own however I want to, so whenever I go to save in your game, I can save to whatever the hell one I want. That's the beauty of obviously Bethesda gets shit on and Skyrim gets shit on, yada yada yada, but that game is brilliant, and so is Fallout, because you get to do exactly that. You can make as many separate save files as you want and track them. You can go back at any point, you know what I mean? I just wish more games did that.
Sure. It's frustrating. Now, the way I was able to do this was because it gives you 5 save file options. Okay. But I am going to have to, I kind of had a note in my phone, and here's where the branch starts, here's where I have to hit this thing, save.
You had to plan it out.
There.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Listed my save files, so I think it's going to work out fine. I'm on the path now, if you will. And so I'm excited to be able to go back and do that without having to play the game. Kind of flew by the seat of my pants, or by the skin of my teeth, I guess you could say, on that one. But we'll see if I end up playing the other houses. I'm more interested, as I've said, kind of just following this secret path in the house I've already started with, as opposed to starting a whole new house, but we'll see.
So, not including Madden, my last previous major game was Super Mario Maker 2, right? Yours is obviously Fire Emblem. We're both gonna get Control pending reviews, right?
No, I'm day 1 Control.
You're day 1, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. Isn't there a big release this fall that you're optimistic on, but you're gonna wait for reviews on? Not Star Wars.
Death Stranding.
Maybe Death Stranding. Maybe Star Wars.
Star Wars 2, yeah, definitely. I'm day 1 on Pokemon.
What's coming out? I'm trying to think of. There was another. What's coming out this fall? It's not that important.
I'm day 1 on Dragon Quest Switch.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's. Oh, and
Dragon Quest 11.
A game I'm really interested got a release date too. This isn't in the news, but Indivisible, the like 2D hand drawn art style, like Metroidvania. It's by the people
Is
who
that
made
from
the
Microsoft's E3 conference this year?
not this year, no. It was actually a couple of years ago. It's by the team who did Skullgirls, the fighting game. Um,
Gotcha.
that it's a 2D like Metroidvania platformer. It got announced coming out in October for all major platforms except for Switch. It is coming to Switch, but that date wasn't announced yet. Um,
Yeah, I think okay. So I'm day one on Control. I'm day one on Dragon Quest 11. I'm 99% sure I'm gonna be doing Borderlands 3 day one. Ghost Recon Breakpoint I'm gonna do day one. Sword and Shield I'm gonna do day one, and then Fallen Order is probably my biggest on the fence right now.
okay. Before we hop into the quickie news, is there anything else you wanted to mention besides Fire Emblem?
Whew, finishing up that second season of Hannibal, Jared, and my God, I've never seen anything so grotesque in all of my life.
God.
Like, I don't, I don't even know what to say. Like, even if I spoiled it for you, which I'm not obviously gonna do, I would just be like, so that's the thing, Jared. I don't know what else to say about it. Sorry. It's just like,
Yeah.
wow. So I don't even know if I can recommend the series at this point. It's gotten so dark. It is so unbelievably dark. Now, it's fantastic. But it's like to recommend that to someone is almost like a mental burden that you're recommending them,
Yeah.
which is not something I'm in the habit of doing, recommending mental burdens to people. So, emotional burden as well. So, that is where we're at, but still a fantastic season. It's a weird give and take I have with that series, but yeah,
Let's hop in.
very fucking crazy.
I've heard about the show and I just don't. I might want to get to it eventually because obviously it was canceled, so it's not like a long running series. But who knows? We'll see.
Quick shout out to some horror that's not quite as balls to the fucking wall. Rosemary's Baby I watched recently, and that is a wild ride. That is quite a film. Quite a film.
Let's hop into the quickie news here. First up, Rockstar Games. They're adding roles to Red Dead Online. So in the next big update, they're going to be adding the Bounty Hunter, Collector, and Trader roles. So what this allows players to do is each player can pursue new gameplay opportunities for the role they choose. So bounty hunters will be able to chase down criminals who are wanted to get gold from that. Collectors will be able to hunt down antiques and treasures and collectibles to sell off to collectors or rich people who just want to spend their money. And traders are the people who are going to go out and hunt and collect natural resources like flowers and wood and stuff and sell that. More of a natural law of the land type way to make your money. Sounds pretty interesting. It doesn't seem like you're going to be committed to a specific role for the entirety of your online play. So once you pick one, you're not like locked into it, which is cool. Haven't really been interested in Red Dead Online. I hopped in when the game had first released, and it was pretty bare bones and boring. There wasn't a whole lot to do. But when this new update comes out, I'm going to be hopping in and checking it out because the collector role seems pretty cool. So I'll end up giving my thoughts on how that goes and see what it does for Red Dead Online in general. I still love that game.
To hear you say it was boring first time around.
Well, yeah, man. It lost a lot of its online player base because there just wasn't a whole lot to do, and that was the worry going into it. Is like it doesn't have as many options as a GTA Online, right? Like you can't introduce planes and cars and racetracks and all of this crazy stuff.
Are you kind of doing the same thing though? Like, are you buying a house in Red Dead Online and
when at launch you couldn't do any of that? No, you couldn't get a house or any of that stuff. It was like very bare bones.
So, buying property in GTA Online, can I go to an address and visit your place if you've bought one?
Yes. I'll be in my house and you can hop in and hey, we're in my, penthouse in the middle of downtown or whatever.
Gotcha.
But you can't customize
there
inside the house or anything.
Specific addresses for people, like we couldn't own the same house on separate profiles.
There's like 15 properties, and you can own any of those 15, and I could own any of those 15. We could both own literally the same house, but when I walk into it, it's my place. When you walk into it, it's your place.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Next up, Death Stranding is likely no longer PlayStation 4 exclusive. The reset eras of the world ended up finding out that PlayStation no longer has the game listed on its official website alongside its other exclusives on the PlayStation 4. This is kind of weird because as of May 26th, it was listed as a PlayStation 4 exclusive on the site. It had those only on PlayStation 4 marketing additions to the bottom of its marketing materials. And so this change means that there may be a PC release announcement on the horizon. Obviously, Gamescom is in the coming weeks. Jeff Keighley, the Game Awards E3 man himself, announced that he's doing a Gamescom launch event where there's going to be 15 plus reveals of new games, add-ons, updates, expansions, all of that stuff. In addition to that, he announced that Hideo Kojima was going to be a guest. So people were wondering, are we getting a new trailer? Before all of this PS4 exclusive stuff went down, people were like, oh, are we getting a new Death Stranding trailer? What are they going to do? Are they going to show us maybe some new like pre-order thing or something, right? Something new. Then all of this stuff broke about it not being a PlayStation 4 exclusive anymore, and this is leading people to believe that at Gamescom, Hideo Kojima is going to announce that the game is coming to PC as well. Obviously, for the likes of us, this doesn't really change anything. Like, it's still a console exclusive on PlayStation. Who cares? It's whatever. But I am interested to see how this goes down with the fandoms of the world, because for the longest time, one of the arguments, and obviously this is generalizing, I'm not saying all PlayStation gamers are like this, just like not all Xbox gamers are like anyway, but there's been this weird argument between the hardcore like baby trolley fandoms of Xbox doesn't have any real console exclusives because all of their exclusive launch on PC, which totally misses the point of console exclusives in the first place. Anyways, that's been the whole argument, right? Of like, well, Gears is coming out on PC, so it's not technically a console exclusive. So now that PlayStation gamers are going to be seeing their real, we assume, if this all holds true, at launch version of this, because we have seen PlayStation 4 exclusive games come to PC after its release, like Detroit Become Human. What else am I missing? There's another one recently.
Bloodborne didn't go to PC.
Didn't, no. There's another one.
Helldivers is a smaller example.
Yeah. So I'm just interested to see how that plays out.
Is Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls?
Yeah, on PC as well. All Aquatic Dreams catalog. But that was like after the date, so it's interesting to see how this plays out for people, because
day one,
there is, like I said before, the likes of me, you, Dom, people like us. It's not like a crazy dramatic thing, or it doesn't really affect us in any meaningful way. But there are people out there who the flag waving, the bannermen of PlayStation and Xbox, they argue about this crap all the time.
PlayStation bannermen.
And I think PlayStation players will now finally understand how little it means to the base itself that this game is also coming to PC. You know what I mean? Just like Xbox gamers, it doesn't really bother them that the exclusives go to PC as well, because who cares? You know what I mean? So
you've got access to it. That's what's important to me, at least. Now, here's what's also important to me, Jerrad. I'm starting to think that this is not going to be a good game. And so, what I would like to know from you is, let's say PlayStation 4 Metacritic, what, in multiples of 10, where do you think it's going to be? Because I think it could be as low as 70s in the Metacritic.
I'm close to you. I think it could be as low as like 65.
I think it could too. Dude, the
here's what I'm worried about.
It's going to be crazy, and I think that the cutscenes are going to be well done and well acted and all that. What little we've seen of the gameplay, honestly, straight up looks whack.
Here's my worry: is I think that this could be the first AAA example of Mighty Number 9. Somebody who was
I'm just about getting those vibes as far as the gameplay, where it's like the last trailer we saw was like 3 seconds of gameplay, and it just looked weird.
The shooting looked bad. I thought the shooting looked bad, but that's just me. You know, when they're in like the trenches and like that war scene.
Yeah.
I just didn't think the shooting looked very good. I've never been a fan of the way Metal Gear shooting looked in particular, but I never thought it looked bad. This one to me looked bad.
MGS5. See, that's the one thing is like coming off of MGS5, that game feels good as hell.
Yeah, and I know that from reviews, and I never played it. So, like, it never interested me from how it looked, but I never thought it looked bad, you know? Whereas this, A, I'm not interested, and B, I don't think it looks very good. And that's the thing, too, is what if we're sitting here thinking of, like, you know, this game is like PlayStation's baby because they funded it, but to some of your worries, like, if this game doesn't review well, or some people think it'll sell really well, I'm still on the fence. I don't know if it'll sell very well.
I think it'll sell decently initially, a few million copies off the Kojima name, but if it's shitty, these low Metacritic scores that we're talking about, I think that it could easily drop off real quick.
Yeah, and we're also talking about a guy as phenomenal as Kojima is in his track record. He also has a track record of going over budget, and it's going to be interesting to see how the sales go in, like match up with the investment PlayStation made, and if they see if it's financially worth it. This is a game that could be, I don't think it'll be higher than an 89 on Metacritic. I just don't see it being a 90 game for me. I just don't see that happening. But
yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be divisive probably. Maybe it'll just be fun to watch cutscenes on YouTube, you know?
Yeah. But here's so Red Dead was divisive, but critically it reviewed very well, right? I think this might be divisive in both player feedback and review scores, you know? Just because of the way it is. It's so weird and obtuse, and I've never been a Metal Gear guy. I've respected its legacy, and I've respected Kojima. So off the bat, I've had zero interest in it from the get-go, right? Death Stranding. Then as the trailers and stuff started coming out, and I'm seeing it's just as weird, if even more obtuse than Death Stranding, I'm even getting pulled farther away from being interested. And then I start hearing people like you, who really love Metal Gear, being hesitant. And that's where I'm like, I'm even more worried, because I can understand where I'm coming from. The person who has no interest in any of it, I'm like, okay, obviously I'm going to be somebody who's probably not interested. But when I start hearing the fans being like, ooh, who knows, that's where I'm like, oh God. Now, like, that makes me even more cautious.
You may not be a fan of Metal Gear, Jerrad, but the thing that both that game series and this one have in common, and I think that we can at least agree on, is the merit of Yoji Shinkawa.
Oh, yeah. Now, I think those games have always looked dope.
Yes, and the character design by Yoji Shinkawa is just
legendary.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the concept art that he works on and all that. So, and there are aspects of this game that are mastercraft level, but it does not seem that that's going to be the full story. We'll have to wait and see, of course, for Final Judgment, but if nothing else, I am really excited about the cast, because I really like a lot of these actors that we're seeing here. So, if nothing else, that is there.
But it's on PC, so we shouldn't care anymore, Jerrad.
Oh, boy. If I can't have it to myself, I don't want it.
And honestly, this may be a reality that PlayStation players might have to look forward to, like with other second and third party partnerships of, you know, games aren't cheap to make, and even PlayStation, who we recently announced had 100 million consoles shipped, like, it's in the publisher's best interest to put it anywhere they can, and putting those games on PC, I don't think affects the console market as drastically. I think it just only benefits them to get more sales, you know? I don't know. I don't mind Xbox or PlayStation exclusives coming to PC. I mean, honestly, I don't mind them coming to other platforms either, but realistically, the platforms that never do that, you know? So just like, whatever.
Speaking of second and third party exclusives. Do you think that we might have an Order 1886 situation going on here where the cutscenes look gorgeous and they're well acted, but the gameplay just isn't there?
Or it's a 4-hour game.
Well, I don't think it'll be that short, but it could be 6 or 8 hours,
And that's a tough thing. Like, obviously we always have this discussion between us three that length doesn't dictate value. Like, if it's a 6-hour experience that you absolutely adore and you feel it's worth $60, that's on you. Consumers determine the value. For me, just looking at a game and not being interested in it, the moment I hear a $60 game for 6 hours and I'm already not really interested in it, to me that's like, oof, that's not good value. Oof. But that's my own personal view on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, who knows?
You certainly dig that for sure.
And what if it's a 6-hour game with mostly cutscenes? You know what I mean? That's the worry too.
Yeah, I mean that value is important. We're looking at these vouchers we've got with Nintendo. We've talked about Marvel Ultimate Alliance not necessarily bringing the full value for $60. With there being all the games I just rattled off this fall that I'm like day one on for sure. There's no free passes here, so you can't be serving us bullshit and expecting us to buy it.
Speaking of the vouchers, I already have one of those vouchers set and ready to go for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and we got a new trailer this week.
Ooh. Are you able to do that now?
I don't think I can activate it yet. I don't think it's gone available yet, but once it does...
you're just saving it in your pocket, I guess.
Exactly.
Yes.
One for that, and then I don't know if I'm going to use it for Link's Awakening yet, or just save it for Animal Crossing next year and just buy Link's Awakening out of pocket. Haven't decided yet. But with Pokemon Sword and Shield, we got a new trailer. It unveiled some stuff. The Galarian forms of some previous Pokemon, including Coughing and Wheezing. They look like gentlemen with their giant mustaches and top hats. We got a pretty cool evolution to Zigzagoon, a normal type from, I think it's Gen 3 or 4. A Pokemon you never expect to get a third evolution. It got one. It looks kind of like a werewolf. He's standing on 2 feet. I can't remember the name of it. I forgot to write it down. But whenever a new generation of Pokemon comes out and they pay love to older Pokemon and give them evolutions or pre-evolutions or whatever, I always like that because it brings life to... Zigzagoon is a Pokemon no one keeps in their team of 6, you know what I mean? But this new evolution, because he's more like a werewolf and he looks cool, he could end up in a rotation for people. And the way I play Pokemon, and I'm pretty sure you have said in the past, Jordan, you're the same way, is when I go through a new generation, I like to play through that game all the way with the Pokemon that are in that game. I don't trade in all of my Pokemon in and then bring in guys off the bench or bring in a level 1 Charmander to level up in this new game. You know what I mean? I like to go in and play with all the Pokemon that are available.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. Are you saying you're not trying to train everybody equally? You're just trying to
No. So there's 2 ways that people kind of approach new Pokemon games. They'll start the game. They'll get people from Pokemon Bank. They'll get a level 1 Charmander, a level 1 Pikachu. They'll trade it into the game, and then they'll use them alongside 3 or 4 Pokemon from that region, or even just use a bunch of older Pokemon and just level them up because they're in love with the Gen 1 or whatever, right? Then there's the other type of people who will play through the game base with all the Pokemon that are in that game specifically, use them in their team of 6, and then once they finish the game, then they'll bring in their other Pokemon from Pokemon Bank to level up or breed or whatever, kind of playing it pure for what it is.
I've never been a member of the Pokemon Bank myself, just because I love catching Pokemon and stuff. I usually don't finish the games because they're just not that important to me, and they're not it's not like the story's that fucking compelling or anything like that. Obviously, the classic games I was finishing as a kid, but nowadays I kind of just play them for fun and catch cool Pokemon that I like, but they're not necessarily this exact version of Mew needs to come with me and this, that, and the other.
It kind of takes the fun out of buying a new $60 game of like, okay, bought this new game with all these new Pokemon. I'm just going to bring in my old guys and then just play through. It's what's the point? It doesn't make any sense.
I certainly would like if they included, familiar Pokemon along the way for me to find and catch.
Oh, there will be, for sure.
Right. I just don't like the specific examples in the past where they've been like, you got to beat Black and White to be able to catch a Pikachu. I'm like, God damn it! Why do we have to get that past that gate? For the original 151 or whatever it is.
Yeah, but then there's a counter argument of people feeling like the reason a lot of people liked Black and White is because it was the first game in many years to not rely heavily on previous generations, and we're like, here's 120 plus new Pokemon. Focus on this, and it felt like a refreshment of the franchise. So it's like that weird.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it for Quickie News. Obviously, Jordan and I are looking forward to Pokemon Sword and Shield. I'm going to be hopping in on Sword. He's going to be hopping in on Shield, and we'll see how things go.
I rolled the dice the wrong way on that one, old buddy.
The last thing I forgot to mention is they also introduced us to Marnie, who seems like this pop star, or she's a popular person in entertainment for some reason, and the only reason you know that is because her crazed fans are Team Yell, who are like the Team Rocket equivalent of the Galar region. So we're gonna find out they're like pink and black. I like their color scheme, but it's like Team Yell.
Gotcha. So now, definitely don't like the name. And then you're saying that she's a pop star within the world of Pokemon.
Yeah, a pop star. She's something popular because they're all her fans, which leads me to believe she's either, they didn't mention her as a gym leader, so that means she's either a singer or a dancer or a pop star.
Okay, one of these types.
And I'm trying to think of relating it to the UK, right? What's prominent in the UK? Well, the UK is the
Galar region, of course.
The UK is known for having prominent vocalist singers, right? Like Adele, Freddie Mercury, the list goes on and on. So maybe she is a singer. That's my assumption, but who knows?
Okay. Forgot my other question.
Let's hop into the final news story, and then if it comes back to you, just let me know. So,
absolutely,
the big news, the big topic of this week, the big three, that being Nintendo, Sony, and PlayStation. Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft.
There you go.
Had to feel like I'm on Anchorman, man. Kept messing up. Give me the right teleprompter. So this comes by way of Makina Kelly over at The Verge. So she writes, the three major video game console manufacturers, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, have committed to requiring all publishers of games on their respective platforms to disclose the odds of receiving types of in-game items from loot boxes in all future titles. Key thing there, future titles, so not games that are currently out. And in addition to this, people were wondering, well, when will this go into effect, technically, right? So she adds, the exact timing of this disclosure requirement is still being worked out according to the ESA, but the companies hope to roll it out in 2020. Hearing that, it's like, okay, they want to get this done before the next-gen consoles come out, right? I am so stoked about this. This is a big move for all three of them to commit to this. It's something that needed to happen. Here's the thing. Obviously, people like to hate on loot boxes. I know they've done a lot of bad, and they're unhealthy, and they create gambling habits with younger children. Personally, I think loot boxes can be a lot of fun if the game implements them in the correct manner, and you feel like you're getting rewarded with them without spending actual real money, right? I think there's a balance you can have there, because it is human nature, and the reason loot boxes work so well is it's human nature that we like games of chance, right? It's the whole reason why gambling is so popular, is as humans, we like to take a risk on something in hopes of getting a great return. And I think loot boxes can do that, and they do that, and it's a great adrenaline rush, and it's, getting the dopamine rush, right, of opening this legendary item. But they are predatory if done wrong. A lot of times they're predatory, and people, these publishers take advantage of that. We have kids spending their parents' credit cards. We have people themselves going bankrupt Though that I personally believe is personal responsibility as an adult to be able to handle your financial
Dude,
situation.
yeah,
But
like get a hold of yourself if you're fucking spending thousands of dollars on a single game. I've heard of people doing that, even hundreds. It's like, here's the thing. If you spend more than $60 on a single game and you're not buying, like a season pass, expansion pass, you're just buying like little microtransactions. If you're buying a game for $60 and then spending 100 in microtransactions, I think that's out of control.
yeah, I think the big three issues I have with loot boxes are: A, if they're predatory towards children; B, if they drastically affect in-game advantages, right? So if they dictate
Yeah.
some people having an advantage in like a multiplayer game; or C, if they drastically affect your overall experience in a game without purchasing them, right? So if you don't purchase them, you're
Right.
gonna have a worse time than
Right.
somebody who does. I think those three things are the big three issues with loot boxes.
That's clear and concise points that you've made there, and I think we've gotten caught up in the is it gambling or is it not conversation, way too far down that rabbit hole. And I think the point of the matter is these sorts of transactions, these types of microtransactions have become a gigantic revenue source for the publishing companies to take advantage of their customers in a quick and easy way that is very sleazy, but is in a certainly legal gray area,
Yeah.
if not moral gray area. And so I think that they're just kind of getting away with murder here in way too many aspects,
Yep.
and it has gone way too far. So I think that hopefully, my hope is that we look back on this era that we're in right now in maybe 20 years and think how crazy it is that these companies were allowed to just run amok for as long as they have been, of just, like I said, getting away with murder when it comes to giving such little value and getting so much profit off of it.
And the way it works, with capitalism stuff is they'll take a mile and they'll do
Yeah.
that for as long as they can, and then eventually through regulations it'll get pulled back to the point where it's where it should be, or
It's
at
back
least
to
it's,
giving them an inch.
yeah, or at least it's manageable. And like I said, I know some people are very aggressive towards loot boxes and how much they hate them. I'm honest enough with myself to know that I love opening loot boxes. Obviously, I don't go out and spend hundreds of dollars on them. I earn them in game, and I don't open a ton of them. But I love opening them. It's a fun rush to see, like, am I going to get something cool in this care package or this loot box? Right? It's
Sure.
innate human
Cracking
nature.
packs.
Yeah, and I think if done right, it can feel rewarding and it can give people a reason to keep playing your game long past its initial influence on the gaming market. So I'm glad that they're just grouping together. And the cool thing with this, quote unquote cool, is that because they're going to actually have to be disclosed, all of the rates on those loot boxes are going to go up. Because now that you don't know what the rates are to get good items, they're really shitty and in favor of the publishers, like real shitty. And if you don't believe
Now,
that, you don't know.
just before we move on from this subject, I want to give a quick. What is the opposite of a shout out, Jerrad?
Call
A
out?
call out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to call out Activision. Because once again, they have
For
snuck
Crash.
in microtransactions into Crash after the review season for it is over. And it's just the sleaziest fucking bitch ass, most obnoxious bullshit I've ever seen. And that is a children's game in a lot of sense.
Yep.
I know it's a nostalgia trip for a lot of adults, but the way that game looks, the aesthetic, and the way it is marketed is a family-oriented affair. And so for them to skeezily slip in loot boxes after the reviews are all said and done, when people won't be talking about it, as they've done in the past, as we've talked about in the past, is maddening in a lot of ways because you know exactly what you're doing, motherfuckers.
As egregious as EA has been with their stuff, I think this Activision stuff is even more predatory and worse because, like you said, it's like they know exactly what they're doing. Let's get all these good reviews, and then after we have all that good press, let's sneak these into there. And it's not a one-case thing. They did this with Call of Duty several times. So that stuff, I'd rather you be shitty up front with me than be shitty, delayed shitty. You know what I mean?
Now, on the other hand, also, the thing that I found out from Easy Allies, as opposed to Kyle Bossman, it was Bradley Ellis mentioning that jumping into Shadow of War, the Lord of the Rings game, their microtransaction loot box store has disappeared from the game, which is weird that you could just rip a piece of the game out like that and it still work. It's wild.
Yeah, they had so much backlash at launch for that I think it was their only feasible option. Honestly, I don't even think they recovered from it fully. I think their sales took a nosedive.
By the time they took the store out, nobody gave a fuck about that game anymore. So
exactly.
That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Like,
they learned from it.
You know,
I'll tell you that much.
As evil as it is for Activision to do what they've been doing, they are raking in the initial sales as much as they possibly can off of the initial reviews, like we talked about, that aren't mentioning the microtransactions that are soon to be in the game because they don't know about the existence of them. So they're raking in that initial profit off of the the boost that launch day gives every game, right? Like, you'll never be at that same height usually for the most part. And then they're adding these loot boxes in after review season to boost their numbers after the fact, and so
to entice their most loyal fan base, because they know the people that are likely to spend that money are the people still playing it months later too, you know? So it's like a win-win for them.
It is cunning, but you know, it's dastardly.
Yep.
You know, so it's not the way you want to be, man. It's not the way you want to win the game.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 154. As we come to a close, real quick, we'll talk about where we're going to be playing. For me, Gears of War 4, not a very long game. I hope to finish it by this time next week. Hopefully I can. We'll see what can happen there. Going to be playing some more QB1 in Madden 20. Report back to you, Jordan, on all of my RPG decisions to see how deep it goes. Did I mention this last week that I beat all of the Mario Maker levels? Like the story mode levels?
I'm not sure. I know you've been close, but it's great to hear that you polished her off there.
So there's there's 90 levels that are numbered, right? So 1 through 90. Right. Then there's an additional 10 levels that are like the Toad rescue missions that I talked to you about in previous weeks. Then there's an additional, like, I want to say 8 or 10 quest levels that are these different characters around the castle that you can unlock outfits that you dress your character up in for the course world, your little me character, like some additional bonus levels. I literally beat and completed all of them. So upon completing them, you get like a classic Mario outfit, which is pretty dope to wear on your me. And so from now on, I'm going to be playing the course created levels.
Your me.
On your me.
That is pretty fucking worthless, I gotta say, Jerrad. Me clothing is not what I'm looking for. I'd rather open a loot box.
Honestly, I'd rather open a loot box too. In terms of what I'm going to be watching, obviously some more Cowboy Bebop and all the shows I'm currently watching. Last episode of Cowboy Bebop I finished was Heavy Metal Queen, which is so good.
Gotcha.
Episode before that is probably my favorite episode of the series so far, which was Sympathy for the Devil, which is about the kid playing the harmonica with the guy in the wheelchair. I'm not going to spoil anything about the episode, but that's what it's about. It's pretty much it for me. I can't wait to see Good Boys, but that doesn't come out till after next week's recording of the show.
What is Good Boys, Jerry?
It's a movie directed and written by Seth Rogen. It stars Jacob Tremblay, who's the kid from the new Predator and the movie Room with Brie Larson.
Gotcha.
And 2 other kids who are like new kid actors. and it's basically if Superbad, the movie Superbad was more vulgar and centered on middle school kids as opposed to high school kids. So for those who remember Superbad, it's a movie with Jonah Hill, Michael Cera, and the guy who played McLovin. I can't remember that actor's name. He was also in Kick-Ass 2. It's very raunchy. It's very funny. Very inappropriate. There's a joke in the trailer. So all the trailers for this movie, Jordan, start with these three kids sitting at the desk of Seth Rogen and him saying, "Sorry, you guys can't watch your own trailer," which in and of itself is funny. Like, these kids are in this very vulgar movie, but because of the rating system for trailers, they technically aren't allowed to watch the red band trailer for their own movie, right? And they see like a award he won behind him for Superbad, and because it's Jacob Tremblay, who's a white kid, another white kid, and a black kid with a really cool afro, and the black kid sees the award and he's like, "Oh, is that for that movie Superbad?" And he's like, "Oh yeah," and it's like next to like weed and like a pipe and everything, and and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that movie. You made that before black people existed, huh?" Because there was the criticism when Superbad came out that there wasn't any black people in the movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is a pretty funny criticism of it. And Seth Rogen gets very embarrassed. Anyways, looks like a very funny movie. Can't wait to watch it. Very vulgar, very inappropriate. Looks like a good time. That's pretty much it for me. What about you?
So, closing in on finishing at least, my first go around with Fire Emblem 3 Houses here. I am... By the way, I was wondering, Jerrad, are you now knowing that the Black Eagles has a secret path where the others don't? Will you be jumping into the Black Eagles whenever you play Fire Emblem?
Not necessarily, because you're going to be playing it, or at least seeing it or something, right? Sure. And I don't want my decision to be dictated by that specifically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the game. I'm going to see which one speaks to me and go with that. If it happens to be them, cool. If not, cool.
Listen to your heart.
Exactly.
When it's talking to you. When it's talking to you. So, other than Fire Emblem, let me see here. I gotta say, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was kind of the last movie I was excited about for a good minute, which sucks. Other than that, I'll be continuing to watch Ghost in the Shell, which is just fantastic anime, movie, TV series, OVA series, whatever you want to watch. They're all great. Highly recommended to fans of cyberpunk who haven't yet experienced it, I would say. Other than that, I'll definitely be watching more Always Sunny. Been enjoying The Wicked and the Divine comic, Jerrad.
Recently downloaded it. I love Die. Die is like arguably my favorite comic series currently.
Gillen's fucking great.
And The Wicked and the Divine, I don't know if I'm going to be reading it anytime soon, but watching the We Have Cool Friends interview and obviously already loving Die, I went and downloaded the first 7 volumes, so I have them.
Nice.
But nice. I don't know when I'm going to get to them.
Yeah, so Kieran Gillen just finished up his run on Star Wars, and I really enjoyed it, and wanted to jump into Wicked and the Divine, and jumped in, and then found out he's coming on kind of funny, and that Wicked and the Divine is ending with issue 45. So I was like, whoa, lots of emotions there, like jumping in and enjoying it a lot, and then finding all that stuff out. So I actually haven't. I actually have to listen to We Have Cool Friends, Jerrad, because the way that they decorate the set for that series is one of the most gaudy, fucking eye-piercing affronts to the human visual sensory I've ever seen. I think that's a good way to define it.
I love how ugly it is. I love it.
It looks so fun, dude. Like, from a design perspective, which I'm actually surprised, since I think that you have such a great eye for design. I'm like from a design perspective, it's got like so way too many different things going on.
Yeah, it's too
It's
busy.
like when you wear. It's like when you wear. Oh, dude, it's too busy times 10. It's like when you wear plaid and stripes and a different pattern, and it's like your outfit just looks terrible.
The problem is I think the side panels are fine, but as it came into the back panel behind them, the actual like screen, they should have simplified it and made it made like less images of guests and maybe threw in some like objects or Easter eggs that pertain to people instead of their actual picture, because like having all the frames and the images and all of the stuff, it's like way too much. Or it could be the opposite, where the background is that busy, but then the side panels are simpler. But because both the side panels are busy and the background is busy, it is a lot. But like I told you, I like how
they didn't even have the side panels for the first few episodes, and I still thought it was an eye-searing mess, because you have the pattern, this like groovy 70s pattern on the pretend wall, and then you have the like these. It's kind of like what they did with PS I Love You in the new studio, which I really didn't like either, with like really complicated fake frames. And then you have this fake fireplace, and then it's got like multiple layers of stuff going on. And when you just think about all the different layers of everything, it's honestly so distracting that I had to stop watching the show, and I just listen to the show like on my commutes or whatever.
Yeah.
With like I do with other podcasts. So that's a long tangent for that, but it's rough. But Kieran Gillen, Wicked and the Divine, I'm 20 or so issues in and very much enjoying it, and so I'll go ahead and finish up the last half of it because it's a quick comic. I've noticed big thing with me in comics now, Jerrad, is the wordiness of it, the different writers and how wordy they are, because some comics tell such a beautiful story in such like, not, you don't have to have like 5 words throughout your whole comic, but like they're word bubbles with a sentence or two at most. Maybe they'll say a paragraph if it's a dialogue heavy scene, but these fucking writers that just have paragraph after paragraph coming out of these characters' mouths, it just gets on my nerves, and it's ridiculous when some comics will take you 5 or 10 minutes to read, and then some of them it's like they just go on and on forever because there's 10,000 words in this 20-page book.
Yeah.
So I'll quit talking now, but shout out to Wicked and Divine.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 154 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. If you can, please follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us there, leave us a like on our videos, hit the bell notification, it lets you know whenever we upload a new video. On Twitter, you can find us at CTRLINT, that's Controlled Interest abbreviated. I am at Jerrad_. Jordan is at Malamotis. Dom, who should be back next week, is at Dom's Oreos. On iTunes, if you leave us a review there, it helps us move up in the algorithm, so we move higher up on the listing for games podcasts, and obviously with that, more people will see us and we can get more people listening, and the more people listening means the better the show is for everyone, including the viewers, listeners, and us. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next week with episode 155, our pre-Gamescom episode, right on the cusp of these Jeff Keighley announcements. We'll see what happens. See you guys then. Bye.